Ladies and gentlemen.
What's up, Pearlies? Welcome back to another segment of Grindworks and Chat. For today's video, you guys, I am talking to you about a topic that we started talking about in the last video. We were talking about Toontown. We were talking about how I got started with Toontown online and how it eventually converted into me going back into Toontown Rewritten and Clash. So I wanted to leave off from that note because I was talking a little bit about the Toontown online phase, about how the relationships and the marriages things was a real thing. So let's get started with that. So I wanted to talk about Toontown relationships. They were a real thing back then. And I find it crazy because at the time when I started playing Toontown online, I was only like 9 to 10 years old. And, most of these people that were playing Toontown online were like teenagers, So it's crazy how they don't know that I'm just this little kid, but vice versa. It's not like I know if I'm talking to a teenager or to another kid, So to answer your question, it wasn't even a question. It was just a topic I wanted to bring up. But to answer the question, yes, I was in a Toontown relationship, and I was also in a Toontown marriage at the age of like 9 to 10 years old. And, if you find out, if they ever see this video and they're like, oh shoot, like I was in a whole online relationship, fake marriage with this little girl, like I'm going to jail. Well, yeah, but I will not say names just to protect the confidentiality of these individuals. My first Toontown relationship was with a green dog. I will not say the name. He was like 56 Laugh, around there. I forgot how we met. We probably like did a building together or something. And like, yeah. I honestly forgot how like we even got into the relationship in the first place. But all I remember is, I remember him saying like, if you're not a teenager, I can't love you. And then I told him I am a teenager. And he's like, okay, cool. Then I love you. And I said, I love you too, back. And then next thing you know, we were in this relationship. And I remember we would fish together. And then basically I found out what happened was I came online a couple weeks, I think it was weeks later or days later. I just can't remember the timeline at all. And basically I just randomly teleported to his house. He was there with this purple cat and some other dog. And they were chilling, I guess. And then I remember seeing the dog ask me, like the dog, I guess that in a way that's technically cheating, but the other dog he was with, she said like, who's this? And I didn't know what to say. And then the cat that was there with him as well, who was like basically his mom, quote. I don't know if it was really actually his mom or if it was just like his mom in the game only. Alexa, please. Shh. Cancel. Anyways, sorry about that. She had to interrupt me. But anyways, she was like a purple cat. Her name was like Coconut or something. Oh shoot, I said I wasn't gonna say names, but Coconut is a very, very common name on Toontown. So there's like probably like a lot of like millions, hundreds of coconut purple cats out there. So it is what it is. But anyways, and I just remember her saying like let's go take a walk. And the next thing you know, like within a few seconds, I was removed off, my ex-boyfriend's, aka the green dog's, friends list. I was being removed from it. I got the notification at the bottom that says like he removed me from my friends list. I'm like, wow, okay. So that was that. And I just remember like, dang, like I remember the way I dealt with it is I just attended someone's party in the game and I felt better. So there was that. And then months later, I met this other like light blue dog, and me and him started getting into a relationship too. And things got pretty serious where we did a Toontown marriage, Daisy Gardens, the gazebo. Actually, it wasn't even at Daisy Gardens. It was at my estate. I had to get changed. And then he had like his mom there. His mom was like a purple dog in the game. Tall purple dog. And, we were doing that thing where I had my friends. I invited some of my friends. One of them was like a pink cat. with like a red shirt and a red skirt, and I remember the mom, just the purple dog, being like, oh, like the cat with the red dress is being rude. And yeah, so this was basically happening when I was like, quote, walking down the aisle in my own estate. And then I think, if I remember correctly, his mom was the one that was saying, like, do you take, Princess Pearl, I was Princess Pearl at the time, to be your wife? And then, yeah, we did all that stuff. And then, we said I do. And then we went to the Berg after that. And one of the friends threw a wedding cake. And that was like our cake, basically. And yeah, next thing you know, I was married. So that was crazy. So this is where things get even more crazier. And like I said, this light blue dog that I married in the game, he didn't know I was 9 years old. And I don't even remember. I think he was also a teenager too, which is crazy. Yeah, none of them like even bothered to confirm my age. But okay. And so what happened was, I think my dad, he grew suspicious of like my quote unquote Toontown marriage. So he knew my credentials for my account. So he logged in. And I forgot, I don't know when he did it. He probably didn't know, when I was at school or something. He logged in and he saw that, my husband, my Toontown husband, was online. And I don't know what he said he whispered something to my Toon. And my dad was so suspicious of that. And he started talking to him, getting information. And then all I remember, and then my dad didn't give me details, but my dad said he removed my husband as a friend on Toontown and logged off. And then I just remember I didn't know about it because I didn't even bother getting online for a while. And then my dad, me and him, I remember we were eating Panda Express at one random day after school, and he told me, I have to tell you something. I'm like, okay. And he's like, I went on your Toontown account and I removed so and so, let's just call him Bob. I removed Bob from your friends list. And then he was like, you're very young to be dating or to marry someone, so don't get ideas in your head. And I removed him for your own good. I was like, okay. And then, I did come online like a few days after that, and I still had his mom added, and she asked me like, hey, what happened? And I was like, and I had to tell her, like, I was generally hoping she was a genuine adult behind the screen, but I basically told her, yeah, my dad found out I was married to your son, and on my Toon, he logged into my account posing as me and removed him from my friends list. She's like, okay, I understand. And then I think that was it. And then I think me and him, she like told him to come back, like teleport to me. We remained friends and we just never pursued the relationship again. I think, yeah, if I remember correctly, I don't think we ever did pursue anything again. We just stayed friends. And then I remember another time I had a blue monkey added as a friend, and he also wanted to like be in a relationship with me, which I told him my dad does not allow me to date Toons online, so sorry. And then he's like, oh, he doesn't have to know. I'm like, but still. So yeah, that's how I found myself in a Toontown relationship and a marriage. Since we're on the topic about relationships and marriage, I'll talk about my in real life experience of being in a relationship and a marriage. So, my last relationship was with my husband. It's my current relationship because I am married to him, but we also dated before I married him, Avi. We dated for 2 years, and then he asked me the question. I said yes. And then we're going to be 3 years married this year, 2026, which, whew, time flies. Let me see. People do ask how we met. I do emphasize we met on a Christian dating app, not Bumble, not Hinge, not any of the common well-known dating apps, a Christian type dating app. And again, I don't like to talk about my religion on stream or in any of my content, so I'll just leave it at that. But, yeah. So what was I going to say? So we did meet on an app. We were only talking for like 3 days, and we decided to meet up in person already. And I was still living with my mom at the time, and we met up, basically. And then people ask me, how'd you guys meet? Well, in person. How did it go? So it was late at night. It was after he got off his shift. We're at his old workplace. It's like 10 p.m. I told my mom, hey, Mom, I'm going to go throw out the trash. I'll be right back. And at the same time, I was going to meet up with him. And by my house, basically. I know you're probably thinking to yourself, like, that's crazy, like, that's not safe. Well, I know, but I was just a girl in love, at the time. Love makes you do crazy things. And then we just sat in his car, we talked, we did kiss, and I tell myself, like, don't kiss a guy on the first time you meet them. Well, with him, I kissed him, and he asked me for permission. So, if you're a guy, you're listening to this, I would highly advise, before you kiss a woman, that you ask for her permission first, okay? I do want to make that clear, because it is respectful to the woman. Trying to think. Yeah, we just chit-chatted, got to know each other for a little bit, and then, I had to call it a night. And then we met up again, like, a few days after, and then it's crazy, because that's when he asked me to be his girlfriend. And I was like, yeah, And then, like, the same day, he said, I love you. It took me a few days to say it back, but I finally said it. And the rest was history. We have a lot of memories together. We went on a lot of adventures. And, even when we were in the dating phase / honeymoon phase, we had ups and downs. And you're always going to have that, no matter what. Whether you're in a relationship, or you're talking stage, or you're in a marriage, you're always going to have... There's no such thing as a perfect relationship or marriage where there's absolutely zero arguments. Because we all have our own opinions about things, different ways of seeing things, and our own mindsets. And especially in a marriage, you come from different backgrounds. You come from different ways of living. Is another thing that comes into play. So I can give an example. For me, well, it would be a little too personal, but I came from a little bit more lavish lifestyle, and he didn't. And, our parents, our background, culture are different, in the sense that his parents come from a different type of background, in terms of they work, construction / caregiver type. And, on the other hand, my dad works for a school district. My mom is also a caregiver, but, and I was their only kid, compared to my husband's my in-laws, who had 3 kids to raise. So, you have to take that in consideration as well, that, and it is true what they say, that, when you get married, you're marrying the spouse, but you also have to consider the family that you're going to be married into as well. Not saying you're going to spend every single 24/7 time with the family, but you are going to see them on a quite often basis. So it's also, the relationship step is also learning about his family, learning about his culture, or the background that he comes from. I shouldn't say he, because it could go both ways if you're a guy that's dating a female. So yeah, that's my advice, is, don't just get to know your partner, and get to know the family as well. And then there's another big saying, that the way he treats his mom is the way he'll treat you, and it's very true. So definitely look at the way that, your partner treats their mom and their dad. Yeah, and like I said too, it just, the way our parents raise us are very different from how our partners were raised by their parents. My parents coddled me the most, and I think that has to do with the fact that I grew up an only child. I am an only child. And my husband's a middle child, so, he got less attention. And he was basically just the type that had to do everything on his own. Whether it's to me, I had things catered to me. My parents bailed me out on so many things. I never really got to learn. So that's really something you have to consider. So you learn all that when you're in the relationship stage with a partner. You're learning all these things as you get to talk to them. Don't make it just going on dates and having fun and spending money, but also really consider, get to meet the family. Also meet the friends if you can. Get to know their friends, what kind of friends do they like, do they hang out with? What's their lifestyle around their friends? And, also, of course, always take interest in the hobbies, always learn about what they're into, because even if you don't like the same hobby yourself, it's nice that your partner at least knows a little bit about your hobby and can take an interest, try it out, and then, if it's not appealing to them, then that's always okay. So yeah, like I wanted to bring that up too because like I said, we were on the topic about relationships and marriages, Toontown wise, but let's get real here about in real life experiences. There's a lot more I could talk about in terms of marriage. Also, another tip came to mind. If you sleep in the same bed as your partner, whether you're married or not, get your own blanket. Because I found out in my marriage I'm a blanket hogger. So me and my husband, we sleep with separate blankets and we're happy. So that's another recommendation. But yeah, this is, the opportunity to get real and we chit chat about real topics. And, you know, and honestly, just take your time finding the person. If you're maybe in that situation right now where you're trying to find someone and you can't find someone, or you're talking to people and they're not reciprocating, you got ghosted, they rebounded you or whatever, you know, just don't give up, keep looking, you're gonna find your person. Don't rush, don't rebound. Rebounds don't work. Even though as much as y'all think it works, it really doesn't. Okay, so that's my spiel on relationships and marriage. Finishing up on the topic of Toontown marriages and relationships, I am just eternally grateful that I married my husband. I would not trade him for the world. And we've been married for almost 3 years now, and he's been there with me through thick and thin. So I'm just very grateful for him. One thing that I could talk about that we haven't spoken about yet is this job market right now. The job market's very tough right now compared to what it was 5 years ago, or basically before the pandemic started. A lot of layoffs are happening at companies. Companies are downsizing. They're reducing the force. Some of them are choosing to close, sadly. Cut staff to because they don't have enough money in the budget, or they're not making enough revenue to keep all the staff. So there's that. And then I do get asked, when it comes to looking for a job, what are the job tips? What are some tips you can offer in terms of applying for jobs, interviewing, and then post-interviewing? So I could talk a little bit about insight on that, because I do recruiting as part of my HR manager duties. So one of the things I recommend is when you submit a resume, you tailor it specifically to the job you are applying for. Do not include every single experience you've been at if it's not relevant to the job, because there are companies out there, I'm not going to talk, not mine, because my company is not a huge company, but there are companies out there that receive hundreds of resumes every day, and they have to go through it. Most of them use ATS now, but still, in my opinion, I still feel like the recruitment process still needs the human function part of it. Someone to still have eyes on a resume. So and sometimes people will find ways to bypass the ATS and still get their resume in there. Some way, somehow. But make sure, just even though it'll take a lot of time on your hands to tailor it to the job post, to the job position, it really saves a lot of time on the recruiter's end. And that's what they really look at. They only takes them about 10 to 20 seconds to look at your resume. I would say the least amount of time is 7 seconds, and then they move on to the next one. They have many resumes to get through. At least with me, at my company, we do use an ATS, but it still goes behind I still get it in front of my eyes to look at. Because like I said, we don't get hundreds of applications every day, hundreds of resumes. I think the most we've gotten is like 50, maybe even 40, but it still allows me to at least look at it in front of me. So that's one thing I recommend. And then when it comes to when the company wants to interview you, one of my recommendations is get their 15 minutes early, 10 to 15 minutes. Do not get there an hour early. Do not get there 30 minutes early. It's too early. Most of these jobs will have you do an employment application, which is why we would like you to get there a little bit early to do your employment application. And then, of course, you got to consider if the company is a big company, how's the parking situation? Do you have to go through a security checkpoint? There's a lot of things you got to consider. You need time finding where the spot is, where the HR room is, where you're meeting the manager at. Yeah, but do not get there super early. 10 to 15 minute is your window. What I really do like, and I would still encourage it might be old school or anything of that, bring copies of your resumes, because sometimes when you're interviewed, they forget to bring the resumes to the room to meet with you. So definitely have copies on hand. It helps out a lot. And especially, sometimes you'll walk into an interview and it's not just one person interviewing. It could be 3, could be 2, could be 5. You never know. So always bring copies on hand. And it's, at least for me personally, I still like it when people bring resumes. I know it's probably not the norm of today, but I still like it. Also, okay, so that is a tip I have. I would recommend always to dress for the job you want. Do not, people, managers, recruiters, they look at little things like if you combed your hair, they could tell if you just rolled out of bed and just came, in your PJs, I would say dress up. Even if it's for like a manual labor job, for a warehouse job, I recommend dressing up a little bit. Because it shows that you care about the job and you put effort into wanting a position. So yeah, when you come to the interview, I would say dress business casual, even if it's for like a manual labor job, unless they tell you specifically, oh, you don't need to dress business casual. But that is a good question to always ask when they reach out to you to schedule an interview. What's the dress code? Always ask. Because yeah, like I said, as a recruiter, I like to see people dressed up and say, like, they put an effort into, how they look, comb your hair a little, just look presentable. Don't come in shorts, don't come in sunglasses with gold chains around your neck, wearing a baseball cap. Like, don't do none of that, Let's see. When you're answering questions, also, we could tell if you're nervous. Just, take some deep breaths. And always try to answer the question and not go on a tangent. It could be very hard sometimes, but we really like it when you get to the point. So, yeah, just always try to answer the question straight to the point. Because, sadly, managers will base their decision on how you answered the questions, but they won't consider, you as a person or your experience or what you could bring to the table, sadly. And that's not what it's about. But, we really want you just to be authentic and true. And, don't just focus on making, like putting on a show, basically. And always, too, when you interview for a job, don't say you're doing it for the money. Or I also recommend do not say that your previous workplace was toxic or your manager was toxic or your coworkers were toxic. I would say, if you left your previous workplace because it was toxic, I would say that, I left my previous workplace because it no longer aligned with my morals. And they shouldn't be asking you, oh, what does that mean to you? Or what's an example of that? They shouldn't ask for details. And always be very careful, too. Questions that recruiters cannot ask you or managers is, are you married? Are you pregnant? Are you planning to be pregnant if you're a woman? They can't ask you about, do you have a disability? Are you disabled? They can't ask you, about your ethnicity. Are you Latino, Latina? Are you white? They can't assume it either. And very important, at least in California, they cannot ask you what your current salary is if you're still at a job. They cannot ask you, what are you currently making? It's called a salary band. You can look it up. It's a real thing. They can't ask you if, you've committed crimes or you're a felon. We run a background check to check, and, when we run a background check and we find something on your background check, like some sort of record, we would basically take that record and look at your job duties. Would this record that this person has, would this interfere with their job duties? If they have maybe a history of, violence, that they got in a fight with someone, they stabbed well, gosh forbid, they, put the knife in the person, they caused some sort of harm, would that affect the coworkers around? That's something to consider too. Another topic I want to talk about that is trending right now is the Peter Pan girl. So, if you guys don't know, on TikTok, there is this viral video going around right now of this Disney adult woman who basically stalks Peter Pan. And apparently, when you go down the rabbit hole of her Instagram and her other TikToks, it's basically an ongoing thing that's been happening for 10 years where this Disney adult, it looks like she's a pass holder. Every time she goes to Disneyland, she always has to go see Peter Pan and basically make him feel uncomfortable, is what it looks like from her videos. Now, I do want to talk about something else. So, I'm going to come out and say that I do know her, but not on a personal level. I know her because we went to college together and we had the same major in common. And we did share one class together, but we never ever talked. So, I did know her because we did attend the same college. We graduated the same class, same major. So it's been 5 years since I've been out of college, and I find it very crazy how this video, it looks like she filmed it about a few weeks ago, and the fact that it's gone so viral now that it's popping up on my For You page, and I'm like, wow, I know this woman. She went to college with me. And funny enough, we do have each other on social media. We have each other on Instagram and LinkedIn. But again, I don't even talk to her or nothing. And we do have each other on social media, on Instagram, and I have seen her post that she goes to Disneyland quite often. But I'm not on Instagram a lot, as much as I am on TikTok, on Twitch, on YouTube. So when I saw this video surface, I'm like, wow, like, I didn't know this was a big thing that was happening. And I'm seeing all these videos talking about how she's basically like harassing him, stalking him, and how it's like an unhealthy obsession she has, and she's married to a Marine, and she has this thing going on, and it's like, wow, So if you were to ask me what are my thoughts on it, as someone who has gone to Disneyland in the past, and I kind of, I think it's sucks what she's going through and that she's getting all this hate, but at the same time though, I can kind of see why people are hating. Because for me, I really like Glinda. She's one of my favorite characters. And, they just brought back her character for meet and greets at Universal Studios Hollywood. But, whenever I go to Universal Studios, I used to be a pass holder back then. I would never take up the character's time like that, in my opinion. Like, the way I see it, there are children out there that are at Disneyland for their very first time. They, come out of state, out of the country, just to go there. And the fact that they have to, watch her basically be all up on Peter Pan is crazy to me. And like I said, it's okay to be hyper fixated on a character, but there's boundaries, and to a certain degree that you can actually do that. When I first met Glinda and Elphaba at Universal Studios Hollywood Fan Fest night a couple years back, I was excited to meet them and do the little lore and quirks and everything, and all that with them, and share that experience with them. But then, I was done with it, and I was like, I'm going to get out of here, because, I don't want to take up the space for other people to interact with them too and have a good experience. That's just the way I see it. And I know there was some talk that she's, she might be on the spectrum, but I feel that's not an excuse. I feel and I see a lot of comments of them saying someone should be there to tell her this isn't okay, and that's very much true. Family or friends should be able to step in and say, hey, what you're doing is not okay, or I feel and they do it because they do it out of the kindness of their heart and because they love you, but sometimes they won't do that, and I just feel if it was me, if I was her friend, or if I was closer, I would say, hey, if I was the person filming the video, I would be like, hey, I think this is really cool, but I feel there's a limit, I feel like you could only go so far as to, to interacting with this character. Let other people enjoy it too. Like, I feel like you're being a little bit much. I wouldn't say it like to her like that, but I always explain, give chance to other people too, and we can always come back and meet Peter another day. But yeah, I mean, clearly you could see that Peter Pan, the actor was uncomfortable, and she probably wasn't able to tell he was uncomfortable, but if someone was there to guide her or to give her some advice, I feel like this could have gone a way a lot differently. But clearly that didn't happen, so it is what it is. But and then I did hear also that he got fired, mainly because of the, I know, and not because he did anything wrong, but because it's a PR thing going on right now. So if we look at this from an HR and business perspective, and I have seen it myself in the workplace, people, sorry, let me rephrase that. Employees, who are also people, do get fired for things that they didn't do. Like in the case of this Peter Pan actor who allegedly was fired because of the Tony girl stalking him and harassing him, right? And everyone's upset about it and they don't think it's fair. But sadly, the way at least I've seen it, business leaders see it as a liability and just see it as, a bad image for a bad rep towards their name and the business. Especially if they're the owner. So, and also I've seen cases where these employees don't get fired. Instead, they're put on leave or they're put on suspension pending an investigation into this. Or, they'll probably say, hey, let's wait till this dies down a little bit and we'll bring you back. We'll put you on paid or unpaid administrative leave. And if we need to conduct an investigation, we will do that if need be. So, Disneyland having such a big name, I actually am surprised that they decided to fire this actor, this Peter Pan actor. And I would think, just putting him on the leave would be fine, and maybe until it dies down. And, businesses will also have a chance to comment about, the virals, the thing that's going on, the PR that they're getting, whether it's good or bad. So, it sucks. And it's sad. It's the sad reality that people lose their jobs because it's through no fault of their own, when it comes to this type of stuff. But yeah, my whole thing about the Peter Pan controversy is, he looked very uncomfortable. I don't think Tony was able to see that. And if she has what she says she has, or what the internet's alleging, then, she wouldn't be the type to pick up on social cues. And, I do believe it starts with someone telling her the truth, and we don't know why, we don't have people, friends or family telling her what she's doing is not okay, or the actor looks uncomfortable. We don't know the backstory. So I do think it's an interesting event, and I generally do feel bad for the Peter Pan actor. And, like I said, I had Tony for a class, never talked. I always thought she was cool. She looked very nice, and we never talked, though. But I was just very surprised to see her on my For You page, and seeing that this whole Peter Pan thing is going on. Again, I always knew she was a Disney adult since, she added me on Instagram. And I was just like, okay, like, I didn't interact with the content or anything. I just know she was a Disney adult. That's all I know. But, and I do go to Disneyland quite a few times, not every single year. Well, at least once a year. But I don't have like an annual pass or anything of the sort. But, in my experience, I always take care to make sure the characters feel comfortable with our interactions. And, I never want to cross any boundaries or cross the line. So, yeah, I mean, that's just my experience, I just say, let's be kind to everybody, and we just hope for the best. And, still talking about the Peter Pan and Tony controversy, this brings me to something else I want to talk about. I have been asked in the past as well, how do you deal when you're a content creator or a YouTuber, a streamer, whatever? If you have an online presence, how do you deal with hate comments? How do you deal with, reading behind the screen? People, one thing about the internet and like texting and just being behind the screen, the world we live in right now where we can send a text and everything of the sort, is when you're talking to someone through text, you can never tell their tone. You can never tell if what they're saying, if they're upset or if they're being sarcastic about something. You just can't read tone through a text. And if you're a person like me, you really read someone's tone. You're really good at feeding on someone's energy and getting the feel of how someone is feeling in the moment. When you're that type of person and you're a texter, it can really be disadvantage to you because you can't tell if the person you're texting is in a good or bad mood. But that's another thing we could talk about. But it comes back to my question that I get from people is, how do you deal with the hate? And it's better said than done, but you just ignore it and you choose whether you want to respond or not. I mean, you could always delete it too if it gets too out of hand, and then, people will say, oh, she deleted it, but it's like, yeah, I mean, there's a reason. Now, I'm not really saying like you should stay silent, but I'm also not saying like you should feed into people's energy either if it doesn't really make a positive impact on you. Because there's something I always tell myself, and I've talked about it before, is as a child, I really wish, because a lot of people tell me as an adult, I am unbothered. Like, I give off the unbothered energy, and it's true. And I know when I think about that, I think to myself that I wish 10-year-old me was also unbothered. She's probably thinking that she wishes she was just as unbothered as I am now, my later 20 self, you know? Because when, being a child and, your brain is still developing and you're still going through phases of your teenager, adolescent life. And one of the things I wish I had was the ability to be unbothered as much as I do now. And I wish I had that when I was a kid. So, and I didn't have a social media presence back then. I did amongst my classmates, and I kind of wish, I didn't care as much as what they said about me as I do now. So I think to myself, like, I just wish I had that, but I can't change we can't change what happens in the past. But what we can do is change the future and the now. We can always start now to build our way up to a better future. So honestly, the way I deal with it is I just ignore. And if I feel like it's really just not going to make an impact on my life positively, then why do I even need to feed in to negative energy? Now, of course, if something goes so viral, you feel like you should make a response, you should absolutely do so. And, at least you could say you did your part. But, people always want to, like, take things out of perspective. They always want to give their point of view and their opinions. And the internet's a place to be opinionated about things in, like, our everyday life, especially at the workplace. Sometimes you'll see disgruntled employees when you fire them. They go online, they go to TikTok, they go to Instagram, and they write reviews about the business on, Glassdoor, Indeed, LinkedIn, and they have the right to do so. But then sometimes they'll go on social media and they'll also do the same thing, make a video, about how they were fired somewhere, or, how they had this crazy thing happen. Like, I saw this girl say that she works a government job and she took a PTO, but she called out sick or something like that, something along the lines of that. So things like that too. It's just a huge place to express your thoughts and opinions, which is okay. I mean, it just sucks because sometimes when you're on the internet, you feel like you can't have an opinion because you'll get canceled or people will disagree with you on something, So I also think too, like, you should always be very careful what you post on social media. And, sometimes it's good to keep things to yourself. Like, sometimes I'll see videos of people, they're outraged with a service at a restaurant or at a Target or at a store or somewhere. Then that's okay. Like, I can understand. And then, people in the comments are going to go find that business. They're going to leave fake reviews and, all that stuff. And, all that happens. I really just think it's knowing when to post, when to say something, when not to say something, when to take a breath and come back later type. And basically that's just having high emotional intelligence, which is something like I really had to learn growing up because of the way I lived my life when I was younger, is really just trying to be more emotionally intelligent. So that's the way I see it when people ask me about hate comments, or you work, because it's funny because I haven't told anyone the story yet, but when I first started streaming, TTR 2023, mind you, my husband even told me, don't do a face cam, because if you say something wrong, people are watching you, they're gonna cancel you. And it's like, okay, like for a bit I decided not to do it, and then I got into my V2. I had my friend make me a PNG tuber, and I would just put it on the stream, and then that would just be me talking, and that would be like basically a quote unquote, the face of the stream. So, but then eventually I said, you know what, I want to do a face cam because I'm sure people do want to see like the type of person that's talking behind the stream. And then sometimes I'll get into my life stories like this and like talking about myself. So eventually I do a face cam. And it goes from there. I feel like you should never be afraid to try something new in life because you never know when your last day of life will be. So, live in the moment, prepare for the future, and don't let your past hold you back. So that's just a little bit of spitting facts with your girl Princess Pearl. And just talking about, hate comments and having an online presence and just people hating. I feel like no matter what, you could be the best influencer out there, the best content creator, the nicest, the kindest, saying all the right things, and there is always just going to be one person out there that just doesn't agree with you or just wants to provoke you, and for whatever reason. I just feel like there's just always one person out there who's miserable with their life, and I have to be honest. I know it sounds brutal, but I'm just being honest. I feel like there's just always going to be a one person that doesn't like you for you. Because there's this thing in life where we have to pretend we're something we're not. And then when people find out that you were basically putting on a show this whole time and you were being fake, they get mad at you. But then if you're like yourself, you're just being your genuine self, they still don't like you. So it's like, how about I just be me, do what makes me happy, and if you don't like it, then you don't have to be in my life. I don't have to have you in my life. Or you can just leave. So that's another kind of mindset I had to adapt coming into my adulthood, going from childhood to adulthood, because I always felt like I had to be conformed to society's, standards and pressures, and especially as women, we, as you guys know, women, we've gone through a lot in terms of, we feel like we have to be Barbie doll skinny to be accepted by society, to have a good relationship. But as the years have gone by and evolved, it's come to the understanding that, we're normalizing, plus size women. That's becoming a big thing now too. So I feel like we've come together as a society, and for the most part, I think we've all been very understanding and accepting of plus size women. But I know there's still, a handful of people that don't accept it. But, I just say, my advice is just to be yourself. If you love yourself, perfect. That's all that matters, if you love yourself. And, if there's something about yourself that you don't like or love, you can always change it and work on it. There's always room for improvement. There's always, room for self-care and such. So, yeah, and so going back to the Tony and Peter Pan controversy that's going on, basically, I didn't have a hate comment, but I had someone basically tell me that, just from the looks of my profile picture on TikTok, I look like I could be the bestie of the Peter Pan girl, aka Tony. And I was like, so are you just assuming that because I had a college class with her? Because I did comment, because a lot of people were commenting too about the same topic, that they either worked with her in the same workplace or they went to school with her. And I was one of those people that said, yeah, I had a class with her, but I never talked to her. And yeah, someone just commented back and said, like, you look like you could be her bestie. And it's like, well, just because I had a class with her, you're making that type of assumption? Or you just look at my profile picture, you see I'm in a Glinda cosplay, and you think that I could be her, like I'm some sort of Disney adult, which, by the way, I'm not a Disney adult. I just like to cosplay. I like Glinda a lot. And, it's just my hobby. I like to just be myself and, interact with characters. Not to the extent of, how she was acting with around Peter Pan, but just to have fun, with boundaries set, of course. So yeah, that's really how I would respond to the question, like, how do you deal with hate comments? Being a content creator, dealing with hate, it's more that I see it, you gotta choose your battles. It's either you're gonna choose to engage with this person and spend all your time and energy on this person while they're probably out there with lots of time, not doing something for their own life, just being on the internet and just hating, when I could just be out there doing something for me, just ignore the haters. And yeah, like I said, you can really choose where to invest your time and energy into and to what people, but it's up to you to make that decision. Whether society pressures you or not, or, calls you out for being quiet and such, you just gotta do you. But but don't honestly, there's the saying, focus on you is okay when there's limits, when there's boundaries. But if you focus on you way too much, then you come off across as selfish. So you always got to have a balance with everything. I truly believe life is balancing everything, having a healthy balance. And too much of anything is not good. Too little of anything is also not good. So you got to find out where that balance is in your life, and just evaluate yourself, look back and just reflect. And if you need to make a change, then by all means, go for it. It's our life, and I just truly believe we only have one life. I know all of us have regrets of some sort. So, that's my take on that. As of the day I'm recording this, which is August 15th, 2026, today is a National Relaxation Day. So I do want to talk about relaxing. So basically, at least in my personal experience, there are times where I have trouble relaxing, and I think a lot of it has to do with my childhood. I've had some experiences, some traumas I've gone through, and because of it, I found it hard to relax sometimes. But I've been asked, how do you relax? What are some techniques you do? One of the techniques I give is, or not what I give, what I do. In my personal experience, I like to read a book. I've always been a book nerd, a bookworm. I talked about this in my last Grindworks and Chat video, either the last one or the one before that. But I've become a bookworm because of my classes in high school, my AP English language and literature classes, which are classes that we were forced to read and, do homework assignments on it and do essays. So that helped me to want to read. And then they say, even as an adult, scientists say that as an adult, you still want to read books, whether it's fictional or non-fictional books. You still want to keep learning. You still want to keep increasing your vocabulary usage. How do you get better at your vocabulary, at your spelling? By reading books. Preferably, I do like fiction books. The Hunger Games, as we talked about a few videos ago. And I also do like reading Shakespeare. I don't read the actual Shakespeare text, but I do have, there is a series called No Fear Shakespeare, which is the old Shakespearean text on the left, and then on the right is the English translated version. So if you're like in school, or you need like to read Shakespeare for school or college, I recommend getting the No Fear Shakespeare version. So that is one of the ways I do like to relax, is just by reading a book. I especially do it before I go to sleep, and it does help me go to sleep. Also, you could also do some aromatherapy, preferably lavender. Also, some eucalyptus mint can help. Those two scents I do recommend for, relaxation. And of course, scientists also say that when you go outside, you go into nature, you look at greenery, like the grass, you go to a park, you go to a forest, you go to a lake or a mountain, anywhere where it's nature, that also helps you with relax. And if you just sit there for quite some time, like on a bench, or you take a blanket, or you sit there and just enjoy, you take in the atmosphere, that is also considered another way to relax, and just to help, de-stress you too. There's just something about looking at nature that de-stresses you and relaxes you. Sometimes you'll even fall asleep. Not in my experience, I've never fallen asleep, but I have heard of these types of effects. So yeah, since today is, National Relaxation Day, that is a topic I want to talk about, is how do I relax personally. I know some people will just be on their phone, they'll play their favorite video game, they'll watch their TV show, and those are also some other ways too. But just in the case you really want to get a deeper experience, or just try something new that's different from the usual just use of social media, I think it's good just to go outside and touch the grass, as well. But those are just some of the tips I use, especially if you work in corporate America. Burnout is real and it can really happen to you, even despite, contrary belief or people, that do tell you it is a real thing. Everyone has a different way of coping with it and just de-stressing from work or from just the things of life. But, just like I said, talking about relaxation, these are some ways you can really relax. Because at least for me, and I talk about it too, I work Monday through Friday. And even though I do stream on Tuesdays, I stream Tomodachi Life on the Nintendo Switch 2. I only stream for an hour of the game because Tuesday night, just streaming and knowing I have to go to work the next day, it kind of sucks. Because back then, I used to be able to stream like Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. I used to be able to stream on Thursdays and Fridays as well. I've changed my schedule quite a few times, and part of that is because I'm really just trying to find balance in my life. Because streaming can also burn you out, aside from contrary belief. And honestly, props to anyone that's never been burnt out by stream before, because it's a really huge thing. And some people will ask you, how do you get burnt out by streaming? Like, don't you like streaming? And it's like, yes, like, you should if you're gonna go live, you should always be in the mood for it, because, and I don't remember if we talked about this in a previous video or not, but people, your audience can get, how do I say it? They can feel your energy through the screen, whether you have a face cam or not on. So I recommend really being up for it if you want to stream, and if you don't feel like it and you're, just not feeling it, it's always okay to cancel. Unless you have something scheduled, then okay. Like, that's understandable, but that's a good thing about streaming too, is you can set your own schedule and you can choose how consistent you want to be. But you also have to remember your community, like, basically they're used to seeing you on certain dates and times streaming. And the way I see it is, that let's say you decide to take a break from streaming, your true community members will stick with you through it. They'll wait for you to get back, And then there are some community members that have been there for a long time and they never come back up too. So yeah, burnout in the streaming world is a real thing, and like I said, because it's pretty much a job. Even though people treat it like a hobby, you should also in a way see it like it's your job as well. And just take care of yourself. If you're really just not up for it one day, then that's okay. Just take a break and come back to it later. Or if you're not, maybe you set it at a certain hour and you're just too busy in that hour, or you're just tired, like, don't be afraid to push it back and say, I'll be live later tonight or something of the sort. So, burnout is, whether it's in a content creation journey, streaming, or a corporate job, it's a real thing, and it's something that should not be ignored. It's really something that you should take care of to address, because if you let it go on for too long, it can really affect you mentally, emotionally, and even physically. So my advice to anyone that's feeling burnt out, I think the biggest and hardest part of it is really stepping back and just recognizing that it's happening to you, and then just having a good support system that encourages you to take a break, or go out and do something different, get some air, go on a walk, or just go somewhere, go to the beach and just de-stress from certain things. And it's hard to do that when you have like a job that you have to go to every day. So you basically can't de-stress until you get off work and you go home. That's really the only way. But I feel like even after you get off your shift, you clock out for the day, you can still take a break or make the most of, your day, of that day of work, your time off, until you have to come back the next day. And I've seen people on TikTok, they make a series where they go out and do things after work, like one little meaningful thing, and it helps a lot. Like, they feel really good to come back the next day, because they did something for them. You know, that was good. That felt good to them. So that's really my advice, you guys. And that is it for today's video, you guys. I will see you on the next one. Bye.